you don't have to define like what it is that you're looking for necessarily. But if you know that you're someone who enjoys a calmer lifestyle, I would say maybe look a little bit more into the Pearl Islands if that's something that you're into. If you enjoy having a vibrant social life, then by all means, Boca Santor is a pretty great place. That might even be pretty interesting.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Overseas Living Unlimited webinar, and thanks for being here today. My name is Sophia. I'm the editorial director at Live and Invest Overseas, and today we have on the line with us Adriana Valdez, who is the managing editor of Panama Letter, our sister publication to Overseas Living Letter. Adriana, thank you so much for being here today. It's great to have you on the line.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
All right. So in July's issue of Overseas Living Letter, we covered Panama's best options for island living, including 3 archipelagos in particular: the Pearl Islands, Taboga, which is not an archipelago, but just a singular island, and Bocas del Toro. Panama, as anyone who's been following us at Live and Invest Overseas knows, it's a huge expat destination. It's attracted expats for a long time thanks to its well-appointed cosmopolitan capital city, its rich natural beauty and resources, and also for being just an all-around user-friendly, easy place to live for people from up north. It has a culture that's familiar. It has friendly people. It has easy-to-access residency options, favorable tax policies, and more. So expats are drawn here for all these reasons, but they usually go to a handful of destinations within Panama, such as Panama City, the city beaches, Boquete, where Adriana lives part-time or full-time, and other destinations. But what people don't realize is that this country also offers the quintessential retirement dream, which is the ultimate beach lifestyle found on its many appealing, beautiful white sand beach islands. So over the next 30 minutes or so, Adriana and I are going to be speaking about those 3 islands that I mentioned at the beginning. All right, so this time I put together a little PowerPoint of photographs and maps for us to add a little bit of color to the destinations we're going to be speaking about, and also to point out where they are on the map. So the first archipelago that I wanted to speak about is the Pearl Islands, which you can see. It says Archipelago de las Perlas, just south of Panama City there. So it's a string of 200 or so islands found 30 miles south of Panama City, which means that it's a really easy place to reach from the capital. This is on the Pacific side of the country. And the Pearl Islands have really interesting history. They were quite popular in the past couple of decades. They've attracted some interesting people in their history. And the fact that they're so easy to reach has also made them very popular among expats. There's a small community scattered about the islands. And the main islands that we talk about for the Pearl Islands are Contadora, Saboga, and a third one, which is Viveros. And I don't have a picture of it here, but I think you can imagine it's similar in what it offers to these 2. So, Adriana, have you spent time in either of these places? What do you think about them in general?
I haven't been there myself. It's on my list of places that I want to go. But when I used to live here, like full-time in Panama City, it is like one of those places that you always hear people talking about, because, living in Panama City, you don't really have a lot of places to go out to, kind of disconnect from everyday life and the hustle and bustle that the city has. And El Archipelago de las Perlas is incredibly popular, also super popular, like I think sometime around this time of year, actually, like August, September, when whale migration starts. Super amazing to go watch the whales. So even if you don't live on the islands exactly, or if you decide, you don't want to live there full time, you want to maybe settle down in Panama City, know that this is like an amazing place to go to kind of just disconnect from everything.
Right. And like you said, it's an archipelago. It's made up of a handful of different islands. There's a few that people actually live on. And they all, according to expats who live there, have a slightly different appeal. So some are a bit more built up with hotels and infrastructure and amenities, and others are completely natural virgin islands with hardly anything. So I think there's a bit of a range of options here if you wanted to settle into one that is very well appointed and easy, or settle into one that's a bit more rugged and, you carve your own path basically when you set up life there. They are close to Panama City, as we both mentioned. So you can reach the islands by ferry, and I don't think it's very expensive. $15, $20, something like that. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but they're easy to reach. I believe one of the islands has an airport. I don't know if it's functional. Right.
Bella, supposedly, I don't know if it's functional either, but supposedly Bella has an airport to get. Yeah.
Exactly. So they're easy to reach, which means they're easy to get the things that you need for daily life. Things like, groceries, cleaning products, etc. Everyday items. The main appeal for expats who relocate here is, like I mentioned, the ultimate beach lifestyle. So these islands are surrounded by tons of biodiversity. Adriana mentioned the whales, but there's tons of biodiversity surrounding these islands. They're a source of interest for geologists, birders, people who like bird watching, marine biologists, of course. But they're also just a place to go if you want to hang out on the beach. So for beach lovers who like just natural scenery, this is a great option. It's not the type of place where you're going to have like big nightlife, a lot of nightlife or, nightclubs, restaurants, etc. They're still quite rugged. One thing that the expats who live there mentioned is the fact that property can be expensive on these islands, and it's limited in supply. So doing a bit of research for the issue, I noticed that several of the homes that were actually for sale on the island, they'd been on the market for a while and they had quite high price tags. So in the $1 million range, which isn't accessible for everyone. But I'm sure that you can sort of carve out a niche for yourself in the property market. If your heart is sold on one of these islands, there's always something that you can find. But a lot of these houses have been designed by people, they're bespoke, and they put a lot of thought, effort, and money into creating them. So they obviously want that return on their investment. And so the homes are quite expensive. All right, maybe we can just go over some of the general pros and cons of the Pearl Islands. So on the positive side of things, they're super safe. Panama in general is very safe, but these islands are kind of like a natural gated community. The fact that they're 30 miles offshore, I think it's the type of place where you have no fear at all walking around by yourself any hour of the day or night. It's a low crime environment. Don't need to worry about that sort of stuff at all. It has decent infrastructure, so the roads are in good condition. Although expats mentioned that having a CAT vehicle, something like a souped up golf cart situation that can handle more rugged terrain is a good option, and one that many expats take up other than a car. There's good trash pickup. So I think it was Contadora has something like a homeowners association that expats pay into to help maintain the natural beauty and the cleanliness of the island. So there's trash pickup, and the beaches are kept clean because of this. As we mentioned, there's a regional commercial airport. Whether or not it's functional remains to be seen, but it could be functional again one day if it's not currently. And there's also a federal medical clinic where you can get medication. And it's fine for everyday ailments, things like regular sicknesses, allergic reactions, accidents, etc. But it's not equipped to handle major surgeries or serious conditions. For that type of thing, you'd need to make the journey back to Panama City. But luckily, it's very close. So it's not a deal breaker for someone who might have a more serious medical condition. Downsides to these islands, grocery stores are limited. That's going to be the case across many of them. Just the logistics of transporting goods to and from the islands makes it so your groceries come when the boat arrives. And if the boat doesn't arrive, then maybe you don't have groceries that week. It's good to have a reserve of non-perishables in that situation. How bad are mosquitoes on the islands, and are there any snakes or scorpions? I would say mosquitoes.
There's a constant guarantee, I would say, across Panama in general, right? It's a tropical country. It rains a lot. It's very humid. There's a lot of forests. And on beaches, it's kind of like a little mosquito, but we call them chitras. I think those are the ones that you're probably going to experience the most. But like anywhere else, there are ways around it. You just use bug repellent, basic stuff.
Have you ever seen a snake or a scorpion anywhere in Panama?
Yeah. I mean, in the mountains, you'll see scorpions a lot. In islands and around beaches, there are water snakes, but they're not that common to see. It's very unusual to see them. But they can be there. So just always be aware of that. And scorpions, I don't think islands and around beaches are like the preferred environment, to be honest.
I think you're right about that. I feel like they're more in dry climate, almost like desert-like climate. I've never seen one at the beach in Panama myself, or
in
or
Boquete
anywhere else.
Not actually.
There are.
Yeah, in Boquete there are. But I mean, yeah, just if you have chickens or hens and you want to have like a chicken coop or something, they're amazing to just let out, and they love eating all the little scorpions.
Nice. That's a good insider's tip.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So just some other downsides to mention. Water can be an issue, water supply, especially on Contadora, I'm told. It can be expensive. And as well, building a home can be very expensive. You have to imagine that almost all the goods that you need to build a home are going to be transported over. So if you are thinking about that as an option, just one of the expats mentioned you should just, whatever timeline you think you need to build a house on one of these islands, it's going to be longer than that timeline. And same for your budget. Whatever budget you set, just expect both to go over the limits that you set in both cases. They're small islands, as we've mentioned, and they're limited in terms of amenities and entertainment. They're best suited to people who are looking for a quiet life or who can entertain themselves with, books or TV or whatever hobbies you like to do. And then lastly, I touched on it briefly, but the Federal Medical Clinic is not a trauma center, so they can patch you up for minor ailments, but for anything more serious, you're going to have to take the journey to Panama City. But like we said, it's not very far. It's 30 miles. And who knows, if you're flying in a helicopter or something like that, the journey probably takes a few minutes. Mm-hmm. Oh, and this is a picture of some panga boats, which were the traditional mode of travel between the islands. They've been modernized a bit since people have been traveling around these islands for hundreds of years. And nowadays they've been upgraded to modern versions of these boats with motors, and they still connect the islands. And it's kind of like a water taxi situation where you can island hop very easily just by hiring one of these boats or hopping in. But they're really the main mode of transport between them. Alrighty, moving on to Taboga. So this island is even closer to Panama City than the Pearl Islands. You can see it here. Panama City is C and Taboga is B on the map here. It's been a few years since I visited, but last time I went, it cost about $12, something like that, to travel to Taboga from Panama City, or 24 round trip. And the journey takes 45 minutes on a small ferry boat type of thing. So it's really easy to get to Taboga, and it's a really great escape from the city. It could even be a day trip from Panama City if you're interested in just checking it out briefly. Have you been to Taboga, Adriana?
20 years ago. But
20.
Yeah. But it is on my list. Like, I want to go back because I have heard that it's changed a lot which is not hard to believe. I mean, it's been 20 years. But what I find like really cool about this little island, it's not super small, but about this island in comparison to the archipelago, the Pearl Islands, is this is like the go-to island for the weekends for a lot of locals here who live in Panama City. You hear it a lot. Like they usually, again, because Panama City is so busy, and if you want to go someplace, El Valle, which is mountains, is like 2.5 hours away from here approximately. And then you have Coronado and the City Beaches area, which is, they're like 1.5 hours from here. Not everyone wants to drive out and make it a single day trip, and not everyone has a house out there. It takes a lot more planning versus going to Taboga, which is, like you mentioned, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. It's not that expensive. There are restaurants, there are places, if you want to rent like a room out at a hotel, at a hostel, I'm not sure there are Airbnbs, there might be. For the weekend, you can definitely do that. It doesn't take a whole lot of planning. So it's super comfy.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. Like, traffic in Panama can be horrendous, and going to the city beaches, which I mentioned is one of the most popular escapes from the city, not only for expats, but for locals as well. On the weekend, it can take hours to travel what should be, I don't know, an hour's journey or slightly more.
Yeah. If there's, if you're leaving, say you finish work at like 5:30, 6 p.m., right? There's a lot of people that live past the Puente de las Américas. So Chorrera and Arrejan. If you want to leave, like after you get out of work, you're going to find like 2-hour traffic just to get across the bridge, right? So there's a lot of planning into that. You can leave early on Saturday to head out to those places. But if you decide, you want to have breakfast here in Panama City and then leave at like noon, a lot of people stop working at noon and they want to get home. And then you're going to, again, encounter like a 2-hour traffic. And then there's the whole logistics of when you're coming back on Sundays. If you come back in the evenings, again, you're going to find a lot of traffic.
Right.
Taboga is a great option, if you want to look at it that way.
For sure. Yeah, if you just want to not deal with any of that traffic mess and all battling against the commuters to get across the bridge, to get to the beaches, Taboga is right there. And it has some really attractive beaches. It has some, beautiful ocean waters, soft sand, golden beaches. Like Adriana said, it has restaurants, it has bars, it has hotels. It's a really nice place to spend time, and you can get there in 30 minutes from the capital on a boat, which is a more fun way to travel than sitting in a car for a really long time. The main town here is called San Pedro, and it's home to about 2,000 people, maybe a small group of expats among that 2,000 if you're looking to socialize or you don't speak Spanish and can't necessarily socialize with local people who may or may not speak a bit of English. But it's a very friendly place. It's very easygoing. Just like the Pearl Islands that we were speaking about, it's very safe, has like a nice neighborhood feel to it. It's teeny tiny, so I think you would get to know everyone fairly quickly if you're living here. And some of the main things to do here are what you would expect. There's fishing, there's whale watching, you can go diving or snorkeling, you can do any kind of water sport you might want to try out. There's also hiking. So as you can see from some of the photos, let's see if there's another one. Yes, the island has hills and it has lookout points. You can watch ships coming in and out of the Panama Canal. It's right next to where they enter or exit the canal on the Pacific side. So you can watch these massive cargo ships coming in and out or queuing up to go through the canal. If that's of interest to you, like much of the rest of the country, it's a nature lover's paradise. You can look for sea turtles, birds. There's all kinds of things to see here, hummingbirds, etc. There's also the beaches, of course. So it's not a huge island, but it has a small selection of beaches. Most of them are sandy. Some of them get really popular on the weekends, as you can imagine. People from the capital come and go, and they fill up. But during the week, it's much calmer and quieter and easy to find plenty of space and privacy on the beach if you'd like it. All right, what else about Tamboga should we talk about? Some of the pros and cons. Again, you're going to have beautiful beaches right on your doorstep. It's a colorful town full of flowers. It's very well maintained. That's one thing I noticed when I was there. The streets are well paved. Everything has been like hand painted and embellished. There's little like paintings of dolphins, for instance, on the facades of buildings, and it's just really charming and friendly. You can enjoy fresh seafood every single day. You are living on an island, but you have all the conveniences of Panama City right on your doorstep. It's just 30 minutes away for anything you might need. It also has a low cost of living, so cheaper than living in Panama City, generally speaking. Although there are certain items that will cost more just from the fact that you're on an island. Utilities can be expensive, especially if you're using a lot of air conditioning, for instance. Water is a bit of a tricky subject on this island. That's something that I think changes with the seasons. When it's rainy season, there's more catchment, and in dry season, it can be a bit of a challenge. But luckily, again, the capital is right there if there's any sort of shortage. There is a health center or health facility on Tamboga run by Panama's Ministry of Health. And expats all reported that the doctor there is great. Doctor singular, there's not a huge team of people who are there around the clock to help you. It's similar to the Pearl Islands in that you can get patched up if you have an accident or be taken care of for minor health concerns, but for anything more serious, Panama City is the place where you will have to travel. And luckily, the hospitals in Panama City are excellent, and you can take care of any sort of health concern in the capital. All right, downsides to Tamboga. So some of the expenses are higher. Again, it's just the logistics of living on an island and having to have your goods brought over by boat. As I touched on briefly, the water can be challenging. You won't be drinking the tap water here. You'll need to supply yourself with bottled water or figure out a different solution for drinking water. Again, logistics, if you wanted to build a house, the logistics are complicated. Building or renovating, you're going to have to not only bring all the materials with you, but sometimes you need to bring the workers as well. And you'll need to house them and, provide them with food for however long the build or the renovation job takes. And it can be hard to arrange that type of thing from a distance anywhere in the world. But, if you're in the United States, trying to arrange this on Tamboga could be a bit of a challenge without trustworthy local contacts. Again, there's not a ton of entertainment options here aside from restaurants and bars. The lifestyle mainly revolves around the natural beauty, the sea, etc. And then lastly, it's a popular weekend escape from the capital. So the population really surges, can double or triple on the weekend. And sometimes people are coming to party. They go to the beach and they want to have a good time. They have loud music. They have their family and friends. Maybe they're having some drinks, etc. So it can be a more rowdy atmosphere just on the weekends, which isn't for everyone, but it's not constant, so that's good. Moving along to the other side of the country, we have Bocas del Toro. So it's relatively near to you, right? Adriana, have you spent any time there or have you gotten to enjoy it a bit?
Just a shame. I'm actually realizing I haven't been to a lot of places. I go to the same spot over and over again. But it is closer to Boquete. It's still 4 hours away from Boquete, driving. But Bocas is interesting in that it does offer, island living, but it is noisier and busier than Tamboga and the Pearl Islands. So it's not for everybody. Yeah, it also takes, if you live in Panama City or if you're traveling from Panama City, there is an airport at Bocas on the main island in Isla Colón. It's a little bit more expensive to get there. I think it's like $200 and something to get there by plane. And then the other route would be either driving or by bus, in which case it takes about 7 hours to get to David and then 5 hours from David to the port in Bocas del Toro. So it takes a little while.
Right. So
Yeah.
Bocas is in northwestern Panama, almost on the border with Costa Rica to the west. And it consists of a chunk of the mainland and then a bunch of little islands and peninsulas just off the mainland. And as Adriana was saying, there's an airport here, which cuts down the journey to get here from Panama City, but it is an expense, probably like $200, $300, something like that. And then, yes, the overland journey is long, and you could potentially have, 10, 14 or more hours going overland, depending on how you're traveling. In a car, obviously, you can travel at your own pace, but on a bus, you never know. There could be a breakdown en route or a delay or something that jacks up the number of hours it takes to get here.
Can I just say, like, if you're traveling by bus or if you're driving yourself, it is a good opportunity, I would say, to kind of just stop at several places throughout the country and kind of just get to know, Santa Fe, El Valle, Santiago de Veraguas, there's a lot of nice little towns throughout the country that you can stop by and kind of just make it a trip, like a full scouting trip if you want.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great tip. And there's so much to see beyond Panama City and the city beaches, which I mentioned at the beginning are the main places people head to. And Panama's huge. Like when you look at it, like lengthwise, there's so much to see between the West and East Coast, or the borders, I should say, and then the Pacific and the Caribbean. There's tons going on. So definitely you can make a long journey more enjoyable by intentionally stopping and checking things out along the way. Bocas, people love it because it's the Caribbean. It's what you would expect from a Caribbean environment, including, the music, even the accent. A lot of the people here, they were brought over to work back when it was a banana plantation area. Really harvested bananas, and there's a lot of descendants from Jamaicans and other English-speaking Caribbean islands. So there's almost like a Jamaican lilt to the English spoken around Bocas. There's a lot more English spoken here than there is in other places in Panama. So it has that sort of Rastafarian Caribbean feel to it, which is really appealing to a lot of people. And of course, the main thing that people love is, the colorful atmosphere, but also the beaches. So it's proper Caribbean. It's not like the Pacific side where the water is a bit more dark blue or even like grayish blue. In some cases, this is proper white sand, palm trees, crystal clear water. It's everything people want from the Caribbean. And it's important to say that there's not a lot of developed land along Panama's Caribbean coast. So there's Colon and the area just north of Panama City, where there's a bit of infrastructure. But other than that, correct me if I'm wrong, Adriana, but there's not a lot of towns or settlements or places where you can really enjoy the Caribbean along the coast. So Bocas is one of the few options to access it.
Yep.
Alrighty. And what else about Bocas? So it has a much more accessible property market, I believe. Of course, you can find luxury level accommodation, but it also has more accessible options as well. It's, again, this whole issue is dedicated to people who love the beach, and Bocas might be the best beach destination of all the places mentioned in the issue. It's got a ton of islands, some populated, some not. It's a place where you can fish, sail, scuba dive. You can do water sports, beach sports. You can even surf in some areas. And then it also has a lot of activity after dark. So nightlife, that sort of thing. There's bars, hostels. It attracts a lot of backpacker type people. Visitors from around the world. There's socializing, loud music, eating, drinking, etc. So it's a place with a bit of a atmosphere to it, if that's something that you want from your island escape. What else do you know about Bocas, Adriana? Is there anything else that I'm missing that we should touch on?
Yeah, Bocas is one of the more popular like island destinations, as you mentioned. But interestingly enough, you would expect it to have more amenities than it does. Don't drink the water in Bocas. You're gonna have a hard time. Also, if you decide that you want to settle there, you may have to take into account that you're gonna have to do like either a bi-weekly or a monthly big grocery haul in David. So it's gonna take you're gonna have to do that because you can get stuff there, but it's gonna be considerably more expensive. I do have a cousin that lives there, and whenever one of our family members travels there, she asks them for like fruits and veggies and stuff because it's way more expensive. So I think that's it's beautiful, it's gorgeous. People have a lot of fun there. There's just a couple of things to take into account when you're there. Whether you're planning on spending, a couple of days, a week, or actually settling down there.
Right. Yep. As we've been saying throughout for all the islands, there's just going to be more logistics involved in settling in such a place. You have to think it's not as simple as stepping out of your front door and, driving to the grocery store and stocking up on whatever you need. Like you said, it's going to be more complicated than that to get everyday items and everything else you might need. So it's just something to take into consideration for any of these places. Okay, so just summing up Bocas with a few of its pros and cons. It is one of the best beach towns in Panama. It's a Caribbean beach town, so everything that implies white sand, palm trees, beautiful Caribbean waters. It's warm year-round. These are all the reasons people love it. Plus, it has that sort of Caribbean flair to it, or Jamaican sort of inspired flair. And there's more English spoken here than many other places in Panama, so this is a place where you could potentially get by without learning Spanish, although it's always going to help you no matter where you settle. It has a variety of lifestyle opportunities, so you could go for more luxury level or more rustic. There's a bigger range of options here. And it also has a bit more of a nightlife scene or socializing and entertainment scene than perhaps some of the other islands. There's, like I mentioned, live music, restaurants. There's a big tourism culture here, so people from all over the world coming through. There's also a boating culture here, so people who come from other parts of the Caribbean and they moor their yacht. I think it's cheaper here than some of the other islands in the region, so you'll mix with people from all over the world all the time. And then in terms of its downsides, for some people, like Adriana mentioned, it's just not accessible enough. It's not easy to get to from Panama City. Yeah, some people just don't want that sort of headache when they're coming and going from their house. It can be harder to meet your daily needs in terms of shopping. You'll have to plan a big shop, drive to David or another outpost out there. The infrastructure is lacking. Like Adriana said, it is very popular and tourists love it. Like I said, it draws people from all over the world, but it's not well established in terms of infrastructure. Roads can be a bit rough. Water supply, electricity supply, and none of these things are guaranteed. It's also more of a tropical rainforest climate. So when it rains a lot. Perhaps more than other places in the country. I don't know that for sure though. But luckily it's not in the hurricane range. It's not a major hurricane destination. So that's a plus in terms of its appeal as a Caribbean island. All right. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Adriana? I really appreciate all your insights throughout.
I just kind of make a point to saying, really try to, you don't have to define like what it is that you're looking for necessarily, but if you know that you're someone who enjoys a calmer lifestyle, I would say maybe look a little bit more into the Pearl Islands, if that's something that you're into. If you enjoy having a vibrant social life, then by all means, Bocas del Toro is a pretty great place. That might even be pretty interesting. Panama City, and then just, traveling around to these places. So it's just, because I've encountered a couple of people where they say, yeah, I moved here because they said it's like a really great place to be. Bocas del Toro, for example. Like I moved to Bocas because it's a really great place to be, and this and that. It's gorgeous. It's the Caribbean, but it's super noisy. Yeah. So kind of just keep that in mind when you're looking for, when you're before deciding anything. We do always just say spend some time at different destinations before making a final decision.
For sure. That is great advice for anywhere, but especially when you're considering an island, for all that they're beautiful and, idyllic. They have their quirks and their complications. So definitely try to get a well-rounded perspective on them before you pull the trigger and decide to relocate there.
Yep.
All right. I think that's great advice to finish on. So thank you so much, Adriana, again, for joining us. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you all the next webinar. Bye, everyone.